Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs War Room Update. We're on day number 325 of the war with Gaza, 324 with the war with Lebanon. There have been a number of dramatic events in the last few days. Let's start going by arena. Firstly, last night we saw the Hamas terrorists from Gaza, from Khan Yunis, firing long-range rockets towards Israel. One that landed in the Gaza Strip. It joins hundreds of other failed launches by the terrorists that have killed untold numbers of people, something that no one talks about. But the second rocket falling in the area of Rishon LeZion, a civilian area populated by millions of Israelis. They were all the targets of that indiscriminate attack by the genocidal terrorists in Gaza. The Houthis in the south are carrying on with their aggression as well, also at the behest of Iran. And there are reports of a Greek-flagged oil tanker that has been attacked and is now burning in the Gulf of Aden, coming up towards the Red Sea. No one's talking about the ecological effect that may be caused, or the ecological disaster indeed, that may be caused by these attacks by the Houthis on the freedom of navigation in that area, targeting ships of all kinds, a Greek flag ship with no known connections to Israel, again being the target of that attack. But really the big news of today and the discussion for today is Hezbollah. On the 31st of July 2004, just about a month and a half ago, Israel eliminated the Hezbollah's chief of staff, Fuad Shukar, a terrorist who had been involved for almost 4 decades in different acts of terrorism, including the targeting of the US Marine base in Beirut, killing 241 people. He was taken out on the 31st of July, and Hezbollah since has been promising a new and massive response. They tried, by reports, to carry out that response yesterday. In the morning of yesterday, Israeli Air Force, acting on exact intelligence, carried out, according to reports, 100 Israeli aircraft attacking thousands of launch sites of Hezbollah that were prepared and ready to send 6,000 accurate missiles, not rockets. What's the difference? Rockets you shoot, they fall wherever they fall. Missiles can be guided in their trajectory. According to the reports, Hezbollah was preparing and ready to launch 6,000 missiles towards Israel, again targeting strategic assets, strategic civilian infrastructure, and Israel acted to preempt that strike and really did neutralize to the greatest extent possible that entire offensive. They still managed to fire over 300 rockets towards Israel. They put out a promotional video of all the targets that they claimed to have hit. The evidence of those strikes, unfortunately for Hezbollah, wasn't clear to anyone. And the targets that they said that attacked weren't actually struck at all. So to try and understand a little bit more about what's going on, are we moving into a new phase? Is this new Israeli strike something that is a change in the policy of Israel towards Hezbollah that's been really conducting this war of attrition for now 324 days against Israel, attacking civilian targets? Is this something different that we're going to see? So to try and a little bit understand of what's going on and what we possibly think could happen, I'm joined by my friend, Brigadier General in the Reserves, Yossi Kuperwasser, previously the head of really of the most important unit within the IDF intelligence, the unit that's responsible for analyzing the intentions of the enemy and providing Israel with a clear picture of what they're doing. So Yossi, I hope I described Aman Mechkar accurately to you. So thank you very much for joining us. And if I didn't describe it, please do correct me.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. The description is correct partly because the unit is also responsible for providing intelligence for strikes. About targets, and so its role in what happened yesterday is beyond what you just said, together with the Air Force intelligence and many other elements that comprise the Israeli intelligence community. Everybody was providing their share in having the information that is necessary in order to carry out such an attack. And they all should be praised for what they did, because we had precise information that enabled us to really prevent Hezbollah from achieving the goals that they have set forward for themselves. And that is the most important thing. It's not that all the operation of Hezbollah was thwarted. Some hundreds of rockets were still launched and reached certain targets in Israel. Very limited damage. But yes, what Nasrallah has described as the plan of action that they had to launch many rockets and then to use it in order to launch drones towards targets in the depths of Israel, military targets in the depths of Israel, was done partially by Hezbollah, but we managed to thwart many of the elements that comprised the plan that Hezbollah had, and eventually make it unsuccessful.
So that, Yossi, is something that Hezbollah has been promising, this really extensive response, and we saw the movement of their weaponry, of their missiles. We've seen the promotional videos that they put out of their extensive tunnel system, really entirely under almost the entire country of Lebanon, using the subterranean area similar to Hamas as a defense against Israeli attacks. And yet we still see this drive to nonetheless carry out that response. Do you think that Hezbollah will again try? Will this be something like the Iranian attack of the 14th of April, where we saw really not a small amount of rockets and missiles and cruise missiles being shot, but with also very little impact? Is this something that's now going to be a change? Will Hezbollah understand that our intelligence and our intelligence superiority is really something which can prevent them from carrying out their plans?
I think they understood that even before they tried to carry out the attack yesterday. They could have learned that also from what happened on the 14th of April. We thwarted most of the Iranian attack using drones and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. And so Hezbollah definitely followed what happened there. And they understand they're facing a very capable enemy when it comes to aerial defense or missile defense. But they were forced to do something because they lost one of their key leaders, Fuad Shukr. He's the chief of staff, sort of Hezbollah. And they needed to do something to prove that they charged Israel with a heavy price for what they did. Israel was not shy about taking care of Mr. Shukr. So they had to respond. And that's why they were waiting to find out what kind of operation will exact from Israel the proper price, and at the same time will guarantee success. They find something, they say they found something that is the right price from Israel, which is the base of Glilot that is used by the Israeli intelligence. But they most probably didn't manage to hit it. And what Nasrallah said yesterday was that they will look at the matter. If they failed in hitting the Glilot, he believes they were successful. If they fail, they will reassess and try it maybe again. So on the one hand, it's clear that he has to explain to his audience in Lebanon and in Iran that he acted in a moderate way, in a well calculated way, that he is targeting military targets, and that he believes this kind of operation would not lead to wide-scale escalation, it would not put Lebanon at risk, and that was very important for him. But at the same time, he has to say to the family of Shukr and to the people of Hezbollah that something like the killing of Shukr would not go without a heavy price. And he has to prove that that has been done. For the time being, as he said, we can rest a little bit and continue the ongoing battle in the south of Lebanon and the north of Israel, that in the patterns we have been used to ever since October 8th. That's going to continue. But big attacks like the one that was planned for yesterday is not necessarily going to happen in the immediate future. And that's what he's saying, and I tend to believe him on that one.
It seems, Yossi, that the events of yesterday were were probably the height of the perception warfare that Hezbollah is trying to run against Israel. On the one hand, they planned a massive attack that was entirely foiled, and yet the messaging that's coming out of Hezbollah wasn't that Israel attacked with 100 airplanes and dropped 4,000 bombs on them, but rather we succeeded in our mission to deter the Zionist enemy. That seems to be a complete distortion of the reality, and yet that is what Hezbollah is putting out. How does that play into the psyche of the Lebanese people? Do they see what's going on? Do they understand what's going on? Do they understand that Hezbollah and Nasrallah's bravado was nothing but bravado and no real action on the ground?
Well, you open here a philosophical debate about what is reality. What you tell yourself about the reality is the reality, probably in most cases. What Nasrallah describes as the reality is the reality he wants people to believe in, and it's more important to understand what reality he wants to portray than what is the real reality. We try to stay committed to the real reality. So there were 100 planes that dropped thousands of bombs over targets in Lebanon and destroyed a lot of what Hezbollah planned to use in this attack. But from Nasrallah's point of view, it's not beneficial to use this kind of reality. So he focuses on this part of reality that can serve his cause. That he did manage to launch 300 rockets, that he did manage to launch the UAVs, drones that he was planning to launch, and that there's still an open, according to him, there's still an open debate of whether he was successful or not. That's the story he wants to tell. Now, do the people in Lebanon believe in our story or in Nasrallah's story? I think most people believe our story. That's a good sign that we managed to weaken Hezbollah's ability to tell their story. Because if you follow the reaction in Lebanon, most people are belittling the effect of what Hezbollah did, and focus on the fact that he hit chicken. Yeah, that's the main message. So the people understand that it was not successful, that Hezbollah didn't manage to charge Israel with a heavy price. But if you look at from the point of view of the people living in the northern part of Israel, they are also not satisfied with what Israel did. They say, well, you wake up only when there's a threat to Tel Aviv. You leave us fighting this ongoing war and keep us away from our villages and the communities for a long time. And what needs to be done is something much bigger. It's a ground operation in the south that would kick Hezbollah far away to the north and enable us to come back to our villages, towns. That's what needs to happen. And they are very upset with the fact that the full strength of Israel is displayed only when the threat to Tel Aviv is at stake. So you see that the reality is very complicated. Everybody has their own reality.
Is this, Yossi, really the strike that we carried out yesterday? Do you think it's a sign of a change of policy, also of Israel towards Lebanon, to adopt a more aggressive approach to that threat and to that ongoing war? I mean, if you look around at global politics, you didn't see any type of widespread condemnation of Israel's actions to defend itself against those rockets, not from the Americans. Even this morning, I saw a tweet from Joseph Borrell, the ex-foreign minister of the European Union, who wasn't condemning Israel, which is really quite unusual for him in his usual very anti-Israel stance, but rather calling for suddenly the implementation of UN Resolution 1701. That would move Hezbollah up above the Litani. It was in a resolution that was never implemented, but seeing really that shift, even in the opinions of those who hold very anti-Israel agendas, would that be a sign, do you think, of more understanding towards Israel and the threat that Hezbollah poses, and therefore open possibly a window for Israel to be more aggressive towards Lebanon and towards that threat?
Well, generally the answer is no. I think we cannot draw a lesson from what happened yesterday to what may happen in the future in the southern part of Lebanon. Yesterday, what happened was that Israel carried out a preemptive strike. The enemy was already deployed in order to launch the rockets, either in 5 o'clock, as Israel says, or in 5:15, as Allah says. But it was imminent that they were about to carry out the attack. So Israel carried out a preemptive attack. And this is something that you cannot complain and cannot condemn Israel for doing. Even Joseph Borrell cannot condemn Israel for protecting itself against the rockets that were just about to be launched against it. What's the crux of the matter in the south is the fear of everybody that if Israel carries out an attack in the south, this may cause escalation, regional escalation. It may cause a lot of damage to Lebanon. Yesterday, no damage was done to Lebanese infrastructure or to Lebanese facilities, or to Lebanese civilians. So it's nobody can say anything wrong about that. But a big operation of Israel in Lebanon may end up in a lot of damage to Lebanon and may run out of control and turn into a wide-scale regional war. So that's, in my mind, something that nobody in the world wants to see happening. And we are going to face a lot of opposition if we are going to choose to do that. We cannot learn a lesson. What I think is it raises the self-confidence of Israel that we can do something like that if necessary. That's growing self-confidence for Israelis that we can hit Hezbollah hard if we need to, and we know how to do that, and we have good intelligence about Hezbollah, so maybe we can be more aggressive. But I think we all listened to what Minister Gallant had to say about it. He said it's not imminent. Israeli ground operation in north is not imminent. And yes, it's an option, but we prefer to see if we can reach a diplomatic solution to the problem. I think what happened may help convince Hezbollah to choose to move towards a diplomatic solution. It can help a little bit, but Hezbollah is not, if the chances of having such a solution for the northern challenge, diplomatic solution for the northern challenge was, let's say, 10%. Maybe after yesterday, it's 12%. Still slow, still small and not enough, but it's a little bit higher than what it used to be before. And what we see is that we are getting closer and closer to the point where we are going to finish the major operations in Gaza Strip. We're still fighting their very, very fearful battle. But once we finish that, we should be able to move more powers and more attention to the north. This may make it, this was the added self-confidence that we have in our capabilities. It was proven yesterday, may give us push us more in a more rapid way towards focusing on the north part of Israel, because the cries of the people of the north that are still away from their homes is getting more and more loud, getting louder by the day, and we have to respond to this call.
While I fear, Yossi, that your analysis is probably accurate, that we're still acting in this linear fashion, that first we have to finish in Gaza before we can divert attention to Lebanon. I think it really entails a tremendous danger in that yesterday we had the exact intelligence to be able to thwart the attack before it was carried out. If the next time Hezbollah manages to keep that attack under wraps, as was the October 7 massacre kept under wraps, there's a real fear that there will be a massive Hezbollah strike on Israel, and we won't be able to preempt that strike. And so we'll find ourselves in a situation where immense damage has been caused, and Hezbollah can reap really the reward and the success, rather than saying that already now we need to divert at least some of the attention to dealing with Lebanon. As you said, as large as the strike was yesterday, the Israeli strike to prevent the attack, it was very, very focused on Hezbollah's military assets and doesn't appear, at least according to reports, to have caused extensive damage to the infrastructure in Lebanon or to really have weakened Hezbollah in a substantial way. So really, we're just playing a waiting game, hoping, praying that we will always have the intelligence to avoid and to preempt the next big attack, which would seem to be, to me, a little bit of a gamble, not so?
Yes, but this is a temporary situation. Nobody knows when exactly it's going to change, but we are edging towards a change in this policy. And we shall not remain committed to this kind of activities in the coming future. We are very close to changing the situation in Gaza, whether we defeat Hamas entirely or not, but the situation is going to change. And then we shall be able to focus on the north. And we are already diverting more and more units to the north. We have today something like 2 divisions in Gaza, and most of the other divisions are already deployed in the north. We have to remember, in the north, much of the activity is going to be carried out by the Air Force. The Air Force showed us yesterday what they can do. And it seems that the intelligence in the north is good, can help in taking care of the threats coming from Hezbollah in an effective manner in the future as well. So it looks, and then yet again, we have to remember, this war with Hezbollah is not going to be a walk in the park. We're going to suffer a lot. The capabilities of Hezbollah are immense, and even if we manage to thwart many of their planned attacks, some of them are going to materialize and charge us with a heavy price. This is going to happen, regardless of how committed we are and how well we are able to take care of some of those threats. Some of the threats are going to materialize. And that's why we don't want to go there, because as the Minister of Defense said, look, whether we go to an attack or whether we don't, in the end of the day, we are looking for an agreement and for some sort of an arrangement. We are not planning to take over Beirut. So the fight is going to be in the south. So if we can reach an agreement without fighting, it's better. The problem is that the chances of reaching such an agreement are not high, as I've said. But we know that we are going to suffer. Lebanon is going to suffer even more, but we are going to suffer too. So we try to avoid the suffering on both sides and reach an agreement that would enable the people of the north to go back to their communities.
At what point do you think, Yossi, that we will come to the realization that political arrangement that we're looking for is something which won't be achieved by simply focusing on Hezbollah's military capabilities in the south of Lebanon and specific, albeit strongholds of Hezbollah around the country, but rather that has to be a much wider approach to Lebanon, because at the moment Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, doesn't seem to care about the 400 plus Hezbollah terrorists that have been taken out. He doesn't seem to care about the assets, the military assets that we've managed to already dispose of, and he keeps on fighting. We still, like I said, we're now 324 days into this failed political solution. At what point do we say to ourselves, you know what, we've tried as much as we can to reach a political solution, and we now have to think more broadly and more creatively about the assets and the targets that we focus on in Lebanon, and including their position. For example, there were a number of publications a while ago of Hezbollah's long-range missiles being stored in all different types of sites in the capital, in Beirut itself, adjacent to the port, adjacent to the airport. When do you think we'll make that decision that those targets should be eliminated, even at the expense of wider damage in Lebanon, as a means to promoting that political goal and political settlement that in the meantime doesn't seem to be coming?
Well, it's very difficult to speak in the terminology of red lines. What is the point where we are going to change policy? It's so complicated. It has to take into account the American position. It has to take into account the situation in Gaza. It has to take into account the hostages situation, and so many things come into consideration when you make a decision like that. And it also has to take into account the suffering of the people of northern Israel. They are suffering a lot. So we have to take all these issues in our calculus, and there's no one clear and simple solution to it. The more suffering of the people in the north, the more deadlock in the talks about the hostage deal, the more damage done to Hamas, the more understanding that we can get from the Americans that they have failed in their efforts to reach an agreement in Lebanon, and therefore they need our activity in order to resume the talks from a different place, better place. The bigger the chances are that we are going to move in this direction. I think that if I was an American, and I'm not, at a certain point I need some Israeli activity in order to make my chances to reach convince Hezbollah to reach an agreement more forthcoming, and to make Hezbollah more forthcoming. It's as long as they believe that Israel is not going there, they can go on with their. By the way, I don't agree with you that they don't care about the 420 people that they've lost already. They do. Many of them are the key leaders of key operatives of Hezbollah. It's a very heavy price that they're paying, and the infrastructure that they are losing, the military infrastructure they are losing, is a very important infrastructure. And the threat of damage to Lebanon is something that they care about much. If you could have seen yesterday, Nasrallah explains that he was very careful not to do anything that would threaten the Lebanese infrastructure and so on and so forth. So he's definitely taking all these issues into consideration in his calculus. So it's a very complicated situation. Until now, we were ready to keep playing according to the rules of the game in the north, and escalate, slow escalation, sometimes more rapid escalation, but controlled and gradual. And but we are getting closer and closer to the point where, because of everything I said, our ability to keep playing according to these rules is going to be run out. It's going to run out, and we should have to move to another stage. I hope that the Americans will be with us on the same page, and that when we do that.
So the elephant in the room, obviously, Yossi, is Iran pushing, driving its proxies to continuing to attack Israel. Iran, from its part, seems to have dropped the idea of a massive response against Israel. Maybe there we found the right point to push on to deter the Iranians. Maybe that's something we can learn from going forward also with Hezbollah. What do you think the Iranians are saying to themselves after Hezbollah's attack was thwarted? Are they now reconsidering their approach?
Well, I think that Iran is not reconsidering its approach, but reconsidering the ability to carry out the attack they want to carry out. The challenge that Iran had was very similar to that of Hezbollah. Not identical, but very similar. They want to retaliate for what happened to Ismail Haniyeh. They, of course, think that what happened to Ismail Haniyeh is a result of something Israel did, so they want to retaliate against Israel. And they have to do it in a successful manner. They cannot afford being portrayed as eating a chicken house. And that's why they have to be successful. They know that it's not going to be easy to be successful if they use rockets and missiles or this kind of arsenal. And they want to make sure that it's not going to lead to a wide-scale regional war and that would involve also the United States, because this is something that's very dangerous for the Iranian regime and for Iran in general. So it's they are trying to figure out how do you do that. What happened yesterday exemplified for them how difficult it is to find this golden path. So it's something very problematic, and the Iranians that were having difficulties in finding this golden solution beforehand are now going back to their drawing board and saying, "Oh, some of the ideas are not going to work." So let's think about it again. And that's what we're seeing. And I don't think that they gave up on the idea of retaliation. They are still committed to retaliate. But they will have to think better about what kind of retaliation that they are going to use. They are also trying to wait for the patience of the United States to run thin so that they will have better conditions to carry out this retaliation. Maybe the Americans are going to take their carriers away from the region. What happens until now on the ground is exactly the opposite. We have the visit of the American chief of the Joint Chief of Staff in Israel, and this is the very tight connections between Israel and the American Ministry of Defense, and so it's Department of Defense. It's not doesn't look like the American commitment to help Israel defend itself and maybe even take part in the retaliation. We still have the Georgia here carrying attack capabilities, offensive capabilities. So I think the Iranians are still trying to figure out how we go about that, how we manage to retaliate and yet be successful and not provide an excuse for a wide-scale war. We are going to suffer.
So Yossi, as we come to the end of the program, as you know, I like to try and end the programs on a positive note. The 1st of September in Israel is the day when our children go back to school. Summer holidays are long and arduous, and they're coming to an end. For the 60,000 people that have been evacuated from Israel's north, 20,000 children that have to go back to school, is there that hope that they will be able to go back to their schools in their communities in the near future? We had once talked about the goal of going back by the 1st of September. How long do you think we're going to have to push that off? Is it going to be weeks, months? Can we give them at least a little beacon of hope?
I don't have a crystal ball that would enable me to tell exactly when they're going to go back to school. But I think during this coming educational year, they are going to eventually be able to go back to the school. I don't know where exactly, but sooner the better. But I cannot give a date. But the positive note that I guess that throughout this coming school year, they are going to be able to go back to school in their original communities.
As Churchill famously said, it's not the beginning of the end, but maybe it's the end of the beginning with Hezbollah, that we'll be able to certainly move forward and provide the security for the citizens of Israel and that live now in the north, and really for the north of Israel and for Israel's really civilian population all over that is under threat from the terrorists. Yossi, thank you very much for joining us and giving us from your valuable time. We hope to be able to call back on you again in the near future to understand and really explain what's going on as Israel carries out the next step in the war with Hezbollah. But for now, thank you very much, as I said, and keep well.
Bye. Thank you.